Your kids could get free or low-cost health coverage from Medicaid or CHIP. Even if you've applied before, they may be eligible now. Kids up to age 19 are covered for checkups, vaccines, dentist visits, hospital care, and more. And if they already have Medicaid or CHIP, remember to renew every year. Visit insurekidsnow.gov or call 877-KIDS-NOW. Paid for by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
It was the end of the semester at UCLA. Students were finishing exams, celebrating, and preparing to head home for the holidays. A freshman named Michael joined friends at a dorm party before winding down with a late-night computer game with another friend in the building. In the early morning hours, he stepped out to congratulate his friend on the win. Then he headed back toward his room. From that moment on, Michael was never seen again. In missing persons cases, people will often say someone vanished into thin air. And in Michael's case, that phrase feels hauntingly true. Now, over 25 years later, those closest to him rely on the hope that someone will come forward with the clue that makes a difference. I'm your host, Megan, and each week on A Simpler Time True Crime, I cover older unsolved cases and challenge the idea that a simpler time means a safer time. This week, I'm bringing to you the unsolved disappearance of Michael Negrete. I want to give a heartfelt thank you to listener Aaron S., who reached out by email and encouraged me to cover this case. I knew about it, but I'll be honest, I hesitated. It's one of those cases that stirs a lot of debate online, and I didn't want to simply add to the noise. But once I started digging in, I realized that the lack of solid, verifiable information has created a maze of theories, and it's easy to get lost in it. At the heart of it, though, is a kind and talented young man and a family who had him with them one day and lost him the next without any warning or answers. They've been left holding both worst-case fears and small threads of hope. My goal today is to walk you through what is actually known, touch on the theories with care, and encourage you to stay open-minded with me because at the time of this recording, there truly are no definitive answers. So let's get into it. It was December of 1999. As the year 2000 approached, a wave of anxiety swept across the world over what came to be known as the Y2K bug. Computers had long been programmed to record years with just 2 digits, like 99 for 1999. The fear was that when the clocks rolled over to 0, systems everywhere might interpret it as 1900 instead of 2000, potentially causing failures in banks, hospitals, power grids, and even airplanes. Governments, businesses, and IT professionals scrambled to fix the issue, and the media fed the sense of looming crisis. I myself remember it being all over the news, and I imagine Michael Negrete and his friends at UCLA were talking about it too and predicting if it was something to really be worried about or if it was just going to be one big societal overreaction. Of course, we now know that when the clock struck midnight, the world carried on just fine. But all things point to Michael Negrete never getting to find this out because the last time Michael was accounted for was the early morning hours of December 10th, 1999. Michael was a freshman at UCLA. In the summer of 1999, he had graduated from Rancho Bernardo High School in San Diego. He was born on March 25th, 1981 in Virginia to his parents, Mary and Miguel Negrete. After Michael would follow 2 more boys, Steve and Dave, and their family would be complete. And at some point, the family moved to the Sabre Springs neighborhood of San Diego. Sabre Springs has around 10,000 people in it. It's one of those master planned communities with a big suburban vibe to it, Lots of houses on these rolling hillsides, and also lots of amenities like parks and good schools. And from everything I can tell, it's considered an upper middle class neighborhood. Michael was a gifted musician who played the steel drums and the trumpet. And because of his musical talent, he was awarded a scholarship to UCLA, which is about 2.5 hours north of where he graduated from. During that first freshman semester at UCLA, Michael seemed to be doing really well. He had made friends, he was involved with music gigs on and off campus. He was actually part of a band called Island Fever, and all of his bandmates were a bit older than him, but they'd later say that they had him join not only because of how amazing he was musically. They said he was really reliable and a responsible kid who they knew they could count on. He was getting good grades and was looking forward to wrapping up finals and going home to visit with his family for the holidays. Just before his disappearance, he spoke to his mother, Mary, and talked about his plans to visit, and she said he seemed completely normal and in good spirits. Michael lived on the 6th floor of Dykstra Hall on the UCLA campus, which was huge. It's a co-ed building, and there were around 900 students living in it. Besides music, Michael was an avid video game player. And something great about college campuses in 1999 was that they were early adopters of advanced internet and technology, and so Michael was able to actually do online computer games with classmates who lived in other rooms in his residence hall on campus. On the evening of Thursday, December 9th, 1999, Michael attended a dorm party across the hall from his room. The person hosting the party was a good friend of his, someone who he had really hit it off with during that semester. His name was Ross Wolf, and I was able to see him do an interview with student reporters with the Daily Bruin, which is the UCLA student newspaper and its spin-off podcast. Ross and others who attended the party said it was pretty laid back for the most part. There was some drinking and listening to music, and Michael had been drinking some margaritas. Michael may have been a bit intoxicated or buzzed, but nobody had the impression that he was wasted and falling all over or anything. As that party wrapped up, he went back across the hall to his dorm to play a video game on the computer with a friend who lived down the hall. In that same Daily Bruin podcast about Michael's case that I referenced before, one student sat down with current-day law enforcement who had reviewed Michael's case, specifically the early case notes, and they answered the question of how were they all gaming in 1999 and what was the internet like? And as many people remember, a lot of people's home internet during this time was dial-up internet, which it was really funny seeing the officers explaining that to students who were absolutely not born when dial-up internet was having its moment. But in this case, the officer said that the UCLA campus had DSL internet. So back then, high-speed internet in dorms wasn't the Wi-Fi we're used to today. DSL used the regular phone line in their room, but ran through a special modem that gave a much faster, always-on connection than dial-up. You'd plug in a chunky beige desktop PC straight into it with a cable, and that made it possible to play games or share files with friends down the hall without tying up the phone line. Michael and his friend did this until computer records show he logged off at around 3:40 or 3:45 a.m. on Friday, December 10th. He then walked down the hallway to congratulate his friend who had won the game. There is never any definitive discussion over who this friend is, but a lot of the source material presents it as if they just sort of met up in the hallway, gave a quick handshake, and then Michael returned to his dorm. The source material also makes it seem like this friend was right on the same floor and down the hall. But unlike Ross Wolf's party that we know was right across the hall because he said as much in an interview, there's nothing concrete that I can confirm with 100% certainty that the guy he was playing computer games with was just down the hall. The friend saying Michael departed his presence to head back to his room, that was the last confirmed sighting of Michael Negrete. His roommate was asleep when all of this was happening. At 9 a.m., the roommate woke up and noticed Michael wasn't there, but all of his personal belongings were. His shoes, his clothes, his wallet, all of his musical instruments, his toothbrush, anything of value. Just to be clear, it sounds like the clothes he was last seen wearing were missing along with him, but all the rest of his clothes were left behind. The next part isn't really clearly reported on. We don't know exactly the order in which people grew concerned, but we know that he missed a final exam and obligations with his band, and this was hugely out of character for him. Several sources say that not much happened over that first weekend, and that his parents were contacted about him missing his social and school engagements, and that it was that Monday that his parents filed the police report. It was a little tricky with him going missing heading into a weekend because those are a little less predictable on a college schedule, on a college campus. It's not uncommon for kids to leave for a weekend, and especially at this point in the semester, this is during finals time, so that definitely kind of threw a wrench into things. UCPD, which is the campus police department at UCLA, did start the search for Michael pretty quickly, though later articles would state that Michael's family thought their response was a bit lukewarm. Sort of, we've seen this before, a college student goes away for a few days and comes back, he'll turn up. And they were basically like, no, this isn't how he operates. His mother Mary actually told the LA Times a few days into the search, quote, "He's usually quite aware of his schedule and the things he has to do. This is a complete shock to me," end quote. Police started by interviewing Michael's roommate, as well as partygoers, the friend down the hall who he had been playing the video game against, and eventually branched out to other people in Dykstra Hall. Over the next several days, scent tracking dogs were used and followed his trail to a bus stop. This bus stop is at the corner of Sunset Boulevard and Bellagio Drive, and some sources say this is miles down the road. I mapped it and will have a picture on the Instagram at Simpler Time Crime Pod, but it's only 0.7 miles away from Dykstra Hall. Having said that, the police went on to say that his scent zigzagged all over campus. Now that could mean that the actual path from, say, a high-level perspective was zigzagged if you were to do a bird's eye view over campus, or it could mean that his gait was zigzagging. I tend to think it's more the first scenario because I think it would be hard for scent dogs to be so precise that they're picking up on someone's walking pattern. And it could also explain the longer mileage referenced in the source material because they could be saying he didn't take a straight path to the bus stop. All of that conjecture may not even be important though, because police would later say they didn't think the dogs were reliable and described them as possibly confused. In that recent interview with the student podcast, The Daily Bruin, current law enforcement elaborated on that a little bit more. And it sounds like there were various jurisdictions on this search. There were opportunities where there could have been contamination that would have possibly misled the dogs. And also, Michael attended this campus and walked all over it all the time. So it's possible that the dogs were picking up on his scent from his previous days of attending classes. Still, investigators spoke to all the company bus drivers, and they passed around Michael's flyers to them as well as distributed them on buses, hoping anybody would recognize him. But nobody was able to place him on a bus or share that they had seen him since that night. Nancy Greenstein, the campus police spokesperson at the time, told the LA Times, quote, "We've searched door to door, talked to his friends. He doesn't seem to have a girlfriend. We have no hints of where he could go or where he might be. That's why we're asking the public for assistance." And police truly did search door to door. Current law enforcement told the Daily Bruin that when they reviewed the old police files, they can confirm that officers spoke to everyone in that building. And their search was comprehensive. They actually sent an officer down the garbage chute to look personally on the off chance that Michael suffered some sort of mishap or went down there after a more nefarious encounter on campus. Within a week of his disappearance, Michael's family created a website for him titled, "Please Help Us Find Mike Negrete." Just before Christmas, Michael's case was featured on the nationally syndicated TV show Extra. His uncle Bill Klein said, quote, "My hope is that Michael or someone who knows Michael or where he is going to pick up the phone and call. All his money, keys, and ID card were left behind in his dorm room. He left with nothing. No jacket, no toothbrush, nothing." Now, one question that has come up was, Did a campus like UCLA have surveillance or CCTV footage from back then? There has actually been internet rumors that footage exists of Michael leaving Dykstra Hall. But I have done a deep dive on this case, as have others, and no such footage is out there. In fact, I actually located an article in the Daily Bruin from the year Michael went missing, but before his disappearance, that I've linked in the show notes. In it, they discuss the increase in campus surveillance footage, but it was primarily focused on helping to prevent retail theft in stores on campus. And I'll just read a few notes from the article here. It says, departments such as parking services, the administrative cashier's office, the central ticket office, and the UCLA store use security cameras to monitor visitors and employees. At parking services, 2 security cameras scan the customer lobby, while each employee entrance is equipped with a large security camera and card key scanner. In addition, each of the parking services booths are equipped with security cameras. Each of the cameras is connected to a VCR with a long record tape. The cameras are not monitored in real time. Other areas on campus which handle cash, such as the central ticket office and the administrative cashier's office in Murphy Hall, have security cameras. Another campus location with security cameras is the UCLA store in Ackerman Union. The Ackerman store has 54 security cameras on the A level. So that gives you a snapshot of where they were located on campus, and none of them mention having any in the dorm areas. Pivoting back to searching the campus, though, they also did a search of all construction sites. There was a ton of construction happening at UCLA at the time, and one theory was that Michael may have fallen into some sort of construction hazard, and then his body was accidentally or intentionally buried in a construction site. But university police stated they searched this out completely and that they've ruled it out as a possibility. After the year 2000 rang in, the Negrete family and all those close to Michael felt a deeper sense of dread. With each day passing, they felt their hope of finding Michael safe and alive dwindling, and they were just as puzzled as ever. At this point, campus police and university officials felt that Michael chose to leave on his own, but his family did not agree. They felt that Michael would not leave and not loop them in. And his mom told the North County Times, quote, "I honestly feel that the Michael I know would at least tell me where he was. My perception is of great puzzlement. I wonder, where are you and why?" End quote. At around this time, Michael's computer was turned over to an IT forensic technician to see if they could find any information about Michael's online behavior. Michael had an AOL Instant Messenger account and was active in the gaming community. Had he met up with someone in a chat room, or could they identify anyone he may have been talking to on the internet? People were using chat rooms and on AOL and MSN messaging a lot during this time, and learning about online safety and how dangerous this could be was a bit of the Wild West at the time. Millennial over here, and I remember being in online chat rooms without my family's knowledge and responding when people would put ASL, age, sex, location, in there and just giving it out on the internet. And then oftentimes my friends and I would be on these chat rooms and we would be giving fake information, and we thought it was so funny. We had no sense of what could have happened. I think at the time many people still just held this belief that the internet still held this great barrier between you and whoever was on the other side of it, but we know through a few tragic cases that wasn't the case, is not the case. And when I talk about a simpler time, true crime, and how things weren't always simpler, really that was at this time where we were at a bit of a learning curve with how dangerous the internet could be. But going back to the computer stuff, I'm not going to bury the lead, and even though this might be a little out of order, I'm going to just tell you the computer outcome now. Something happened to Michael's computer that rendered tracing his usage impossible. Some websites say that his hard drive got corrupted or erased in error, and some point to the campus law enforcement is botching this. Some say when they turned it over to the FBI it happened. We don't know exactly the chain of events and whose custody the computer was in when this happened, But either way, this unfortunately was a dead end, which is bad because I personally believe it could have told us a lot of information. Despite this setback, current-day law enforcement told the Daily Bruin podcast that the original investigators did serve a search warrant to AOL to find any of his chat logs, and if that did produce anything, they aren't saying or releasing that. But I got the sense that it was a dead end. In January, a fundraising concert was held for Michael at Long Beach Poly High School and featured the school's jazz combo as well as a jazz solo vocalist and steel drum band. Michael loved jazz, and he used to walk around and sing jazz songs to himself, which, when I was reading that, I couldn't help but smile to myself. It's those pieces that are mentioned about him, like how he was known to have a loud and sudden laugh that was very distinctive, and how he was an expert at reciting Simpsons trivia, and how he hates bare feet. It's those things that gave you the glimpses of the little idiosyncrasies that Michael had, that we all have, and reminds us that the people at the heart of these cases are so much more than the mystery that surrounds their final circumstances. It's those little things that we remember most about our loved ones when they're gone, and the things his family probably still thinks about to this day. The concert was $10 a ticket, and the money went back to the Michael Negrete Search Fund. A week later, Michael's family put up a $5,000 reward for information. At the end of January, there was another benefit concert, this time in Solana Beach. In March, Michael's name began showing up in the classified ads. In between people selling puppies and advertisements for childcare was a line that read, "Missing persons. Please help. Missing Michael Negrete," with a link to a phone number and the family-run website. Michael's 19th birthday arrived with no sign of him, marking for his family yet another milestone passing without Michael. And about a week after his birthday, his parents told the paper that they believed their son was dead and that foul play was involved. On April 13th, 2000, the Negrete family upped the reward to $100,000. Mary Negrete told the North County Times, quote, "I've always figured that something terrible happened to him, but there's no evidence of it." UCLA police spokesperson Nancy Greenstein added, "The additional reward hopefully will lead to more information and will allow us to continue our investigation." Still, at this time, university officials and law enforcement stood by the fact that, while they were completely baffled by the case, they had no indication that he had met with foul play. They felt it was just as likely that he suffered some sort of accident or had become disoriented and something had happened to him. The increased reward did not bring out any new substantial leads, and with that, the university police department turned over the missing persons investigation to the sheriff's office. In early June, his family and friends held a rally at UCLA. Mary Negrete said, quote, "Our goal is to attract a crowd of people, make some noise, and let the students see that there are still people who are actively looking for Michael." At the rally, they handed out missing persons flyers, pictures of Michael, and bumper stickers. Mary continued on by saying, "If there are any students who are holding back any information about Michael and what may have happened to him, we hope this will show them that a lot of people have been and still are affected by Michael's disappearance. We want Michael to be utmost in students' minds before they scatter for the summer." And the sheriff's department had the same idea, so while students were still present, they handed out a questionnaire to all 900 Dykstra Hall residents. And after they got them back and started going through them, it was then in July of 2000 that something struck their attention. It was a detail in one of the surveys about a man in the dorms that night, someone who didn't quite fit in. One of the students reported that around 4:30 a.m. on the morning that Michael went missing, they witnessed a man who was inside Dykstra Hall who looked like he didn't belong. He was white with a stocky build, about 5'8", and was in his mid-30s. So with most of the kids in this dorm being 18 to 20 years old, he stood out. Some sources say he was acting suspiciously and was in close proximity to Michael's dorm room, with one even saying that when the student went to pass him, he turned away and sort of obscured his face. This student was able to provide details for a composite sketch, and I'll have that on the Instagram. Like many composite sketches, it's kind of generic, but it's what we have. Just how relevant is this information? That's hard to say. Some people have been skeptical as to why it took so long for the student to come forward. But one of the source materials states that the student said they did come forward at the beginning, but no one did anything with it. So, I don't know. Police said that they didn't want to treat this person as a suspect, but they wanted to speak with them in case they were a witness. You know, the classic approach. And unsurprisingly, this mystery person did not come forward. In all of the years since, with this man never being identified, sleuths all over the internet have tried to do side-by-sides of people who may look like the composite sketch. I don't know how much you all followed the Delphi case out of Indiana, but that was another one where people relentlessly tried to compare people to the suspect sketch, and it's really a tricky balance. On one hand, the power of community can be a great thing. It can generate possible leads or things to look into. But in general, the family feedback from that case was largely discouraging of the practice. It's a slippery slope because you end up putting people on trial with the court of public opinion, and we don't even know for sure that this person in Dykstra Hall exists, or if he holds any significance to Michael's disappearance. Having said that, a little bit later, as I get into the theories discussed in Michael's case, I'll be addressing the two most common composite sketch comparisons. The 1-year mark came with no new leads, and then another year passed after that. William Howell and Joe Purcell from the Sheriff's Department were completely baffled. They were interviewed along with Michael's parents in an April 2001 interview with the LA Times. Sergeant Howell said, quote, "It seems like there's nowhere to turn. This is a kid who wasn't in a lick of trouble. Usually, those kinds of cases lead us in a certain direction. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. In this case, there's absolutely no certainty anywhere. It's maddening." Howell's partner, Joe Purcell, went on to say, "It's like he never walked the earth." At this stage in the investigation, Purcell and Howell were working in the homicide unit, and Michael's case was finally being investigated as such. He hadn't touched his bank cards or bank account since his disappearance. His social security number hasn't been used. Howell also shared that they found a profiler within the sheriff's department. He was an expert who tries to solve crimes by looking at statistical data and probing into criminal psychology. And the sheriff's profile advised them that they had more than likely already interviewed somebody who knew what happened. And this just was really hard for Howell. He said, "I just don't see it. If we've already interviewed somebody who knows what happened, we don't know it. I don't know it. I've been fooled. And if that's the case, I should just retire right now." The frustration can clearly be felt in this exchange, and Michael's family felt that amongst a ton of other ever-changing emotions themselves. They talked about how they had now spent 2 Christmases and 2 birthdays without him, and how they even tried to hold a small birthday celebration for him a few weeks back. The Negretes gathered in their dining room with this little lemon cake and 1 single candle, and Mary said, quote, "It was pitiful. There was no joy, only emptiness and heartache." Later in the interview, Mary shared that she no longer felt she would ever see her son alive again, and only had hopes that someday someone would come forward with information to at least give her answers. In 2003, Mary Negrete went on the Montel Williams show. On the show, he had infamous psychic Sylvia Brown. And if you don't know about Sylvia Brown, go look her up. She's awful. She has a long history of being wrong and weighing in with her psychic visions to vulnerable people desperate for closure and answers. She's dead now, but she's just been replaced by other people who prey upon vulnerable people in the same way. On the show, Sylvia Brown told Mary Negrete that her son was still alive and residing in the West Los Angeles area. She said, quote, "He's still around the UCLA or close to the UCLA area, in like Brentwood, Westwood, around the same area. He's not dead." Mary would later say that she didn't really believe in psychics, but went on the show to get his name out there, something that only happened briefly once during the airing, so she was pretty disappointed. In the years since, his family has understandably backed away from the spotlight. They just as much want answers today as they did nearly 26 years ago, but they also had to resume some of their life. Back in that 2001 article with the LA Times, Mary said that she and her family tried to distract themselves by staying busy, but it wasn't easy. She said, quote, "Mostly we're totally down. I'm asking myself, how am I supposed to deal with this?" And that's where she said, "I must admit, I really don't have any hope I will ever see him again. I do tell myself we will find out what happened someday." With what time we have left, I'd like to go into the various theories that are out there and the possibilities of what could have happened to Michael Negrete. These are just that, theories. Nobody knows what happened, and anybody mentioned is presumed innocent until found guilty. The first is that Michael left his dorm room and he left Dykstra Hall that night, and something happened to him on campus. Now, a lot of sources refer to Michael as being barefoot, but you'll remember me saying he was actually known to hate being barefoot. His shoes were left behind in the dorm, so my personal belief is that it's more likely he was wearing some sort of hard-soled slipper or the type of shoes you'd wear around your house. And that to me would indicate that he was intending to be right back, whatever it is that he was doing. So, as sort of a sub-theory underneath that, what might have made him leave that night? You know, was there an opportunistic person, maybe even that man in the hallway that saw him and said something like, "Hey, can you help me with something? It's just outside here." And we have no idea what he'd be asking for help with, but maybe Michael goes outside and the person then has a weapon. Did he meet someone he met online? Sources say he didn't have a girlfriend, but maybe he met with someone in a chat room or a gaming community. Number 2, let's talk the accident while on campus theory. Did he fall into a construction site? Police ruled this out because they said they searched everything, but some have speculated that maybe he'd locked himself out because we know he left his keys in the room, and that maybe he was trying to navigate some backdoor way in through some sort of construction zone, and that he fell into a dangerous area and died. Again, there's no evidence of this, but that idea does get passed around, and police have never spoken to that specific scenario, just that they've gone through all the different construction work and that they had ruled that theory out. Number 3, was Michael involved in drugs? Police said they didn't reveal anything like that in their investigation. He had been drinking that night, but not excessively. But Michael's younger brother allegedly made a Tumblr post in 2013 that has since been deleted. And I want to tread carefully with this because he's not only deleted it, it's been removed now from places like Wayback Machine, which is an internet webpage archive. So to me, that shows he's gone through a great deal of hassle to just get this off the internet. And it makes me think that his brother doesn't want to be a focal point of this conversation anymore. But just briefly, I'll say that in it, he mentioned that his family had found out that he had gotten involved in the rave scene and taken ecstasy, and that it was his opinion that maybe he was on drugs that night, wandered off in an incoherent type of state, and that someone took advantage of him and he ran into the wrong person. Is it possible that a college student was on drugs? Absolutely. Do I trust that his family probably got a deeper inside scoop into his life than what's been publicly reported? Yes. But his behavior didn't really align with that night. He had been already to a party earlier, and then he just pivoted to going online and playing video games on his computer. That's not exactly the vibe of taking ecstasy. If anything, he'd been wanting to take something to mellow out. Still, it can't be ruled out completely. And adjacent to that theory is that that's the whole reason he left the dorm that night, to attend some rave, which they did fly pretty under the radar, is my understanding of rave culture at the time. You had to kind of be invited. They were secretive. They were in these concealed locations. So did he go to a rave and something happened? Or did he go out to buy drugs? Others have mentioned that it's really not the most prime time of day to go buy drugs, and that kids pretty much dealt drugs right on campus. So the idea of leaving and going off campus or somewhere else to get them was kind of a stretch, but you never know. The next theory is that something happened to him in Dykstra Hall that night and that his body was disposed of, either an accidental overdose and someone panicked, or an altercation that turned deadly. And just going along with that, one thing I haven't yet told you about is the phone calls. According to reporting in the North County Times, in November of 2000, just before the 1-year anniversary of his disappearance, something odd happened. It was at an apartment complex off campus where former students of Dykstra Hall were now residing, and they had all lived at Dykstra Hall at the time Michael went missing. 3 people reported hearing a phone conversation from someone in the complex who spoke about details in the Negrete case that were unknown to the public. And then the detectives went through all the residents. There was 40 to 45 apartments, and they interviewed all the residents there, but no information surfaced to locate who that caller was. So, are the students at Michael's residence hall holding a secret? If multiple people know what happened, it's a long-buried secret, something that's not very common. You know what they say about 2 can keep a secret. If that's the case, now is definitely the time to come forward and allow this family to get answers on what happened and give them at least a little closure, whatever that looks like. Number 5, I guess, would be that theory that he ran away or he has amnesia. He's living under a new identity now. There isn't a single piece of evidence that supports this other than people who occasionally post pictures of people they think look like a Michael in his 40s. So while not impossible, highly improbable in my very personal opinion. And finally, there's the composite sketch. Did this man in the building have something to do with Michael's disappearance, and who was he? I mentioned earlier that there are 2 main people who come up a lot. The first, I just want to get out of the way because I feel kind of awful even mentioning this one, but it gets discussed online so much I really couldn't avoid it. Michael grew up in Sabre Springs, and one of the people who was friends with Michael's dad, Miguel Negrete, was a man named Damon Van Dam. If that name sounds familiar, it may be because you recognize it from the high-profile murder case of his daughter. 7-year-old Danielle Van Dam was abducted from her Sabre Springs home in February of 2002. A neighbor of the Van Dams, a man named David Westerfield, was arrested and found guilty of Danielle's murder. He's currently serving a life sentence. Damon Van Dam has gone on a radio show back around that time in 2002, and he actually brought up Michael Negrete. He said on it, quote, "I was in Los Angeles in 1999 when Michael Negrete disappeared. I am a friend of Miguel Negrete and Michael's father, and I worked with the men when it happened," end quote, which I believe he means he helped in the search. A website popped up that did a side-by-side of Damon Van Dam to the composite, and it surmised that he met up with Michael Negrete on the night of his disappearance. While Damon does resemble the sketch, so do a lot of men. And like I said, it's kind of on the generic side. The website that fuels this rumor also tries to connect Damon to the disappearance of Adam Walsh and the disappearance of Tiffany Sessions out of Florida. It all seems to want to draw a pattern of behavior out of Damon Van Dam, thus implying he may have had something to do with his own daughter's murder, and that David Westerfield is innocent. The motives with this one are suspicious, and this whole theory feels like a gigantic leap. The second is a theory related to sex offender Mark Collins Rector. He was huge into gaming and was nearby the UCLA campus at the time of Michael's disappearance. He was one of the early 2000s .com failures, but was more notably arrested for various sex crimes against teenage boys. He does look a lot like the composite sketch, so many have speculated that he may have met Michael in some sort of chat room or on AIM or the gaming community and lured him out. It's hard to say. It also feels like a stretch to me. Any connection to him is pure speculation at this point, and police have never named him as a suspect. Not much has happened in the case for years. At one point, there was a burst of hope when Michael's AOL Instant Messenger screen name, TrainFan1, was activated, but it turns out that his username had expired from inactivity and that someone new had just taken his name. There is an active Facebook group that tries to keep Mike's name out there. I've even seen them out there trying to compare Mike to John Does that were found, and there was one that was kind of promising a few years back, but he was ruled out as a match. And Michael's case is still brought up as one of those mysteries that people just can't shake, similar to the case of Brandon Swanson or Jason Jolkowski. It's like the earth just swallowed them whole. But I believe someone out there holds the answers, and it's never too late to speak up. Michael would be 44 years old now, and he would no doubt still be gifting the world with his musical talents and warming his family's hearts with his contagious laugh. While they can't get all of that back, they can get the knowledge of what happened that night and have the chance of giving him a proper burial. If you can give them those answers, or you know absolutely anything about the disappearance of Michael Negrete from the UCLA campus in 1999, please contact the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Office at 323-890-5500. This has been another episode of A Simpler Time True Crime. If you appreciate the work I'm doing, please leave a 5-star review and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. If you want to support the show and have the ability to do so, consider clicking the link to my Spreaker supporter page at the bottom of the show notes and pledge $5 a month. This helps me to continue doing the work I'm doing and dedicate even more time to it, and I'll soon be adding some more bonus content. Case suggestions can be sent to simplertimecrimepod@gmail.com. As always, thank you so much for listening, and join me again next Monday.